to the latest and greatest presentation here at ICF South Florida. Today we have some local talent, André Brown. I'm super excited to see what he is going to bring for us today. Before we get started, I do want to point your attention to the screen behind me, the What Else Wednesday. That is our brand new networking and just chit chat. Everybody gets to, from 3 to 4 next Wednesday, because it's going to be the last Wednesday of every month. We're just going to get together. Go ahead and get on the calendar and register. We're just going to chat. We're going to talk about things, coaching, things about life. There's no agenda. We're just going to bring all of us together, or as many as want to join, and just talk about whatever we want. Shakti is heading this thing up, so she and I will be there for sure. It's 3 o'clock, so it's a little early. I don't know if you want to bring a cocktail. Maybe you just bring a nice latte or something. But hey, you know what? You do you. So you bring whatever you want. But it's a great chance for us to get together, and if we want to talk about coaching stuff, we can, but we don't have to. Just a great chance to get to know each other a little bit better. So that's the big announcement. We also have Masterclass by Master Coaches coming up in October. Note, it is not on Wednesday. It is on Thursday because we're observing Yom Kippur. We didn't want to do an event on that day. So instead of Wednesday, it's going to be on Thursday. So make sure you check your calendar. Make sure you prepare. 2 great sessions, one by Tracy Sinclair, one by Joanna Davis. Both of them 12:30, 5:30, the following, not next, but the following, the first Thursday of October, which also happens to be my birthday. So I expect lots of presents and love and showers of good wishes. Maybe not presents. Anyway, let me get on with the introduction of our very wonderful guest today. André Brown is an African-American male who has had a lifetime of personally experiencing individual, institutional, and structural racism. And despite this adversity, he has earned a master's degree in human development and family studies, and is also an ICF credentialed coach. He spent over 2 decades working in multiple roles within the Rhode Island Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the RIDCYF. He has developed and facilitated several trainings, including cultural competence in child welfare through self-awareness, the impact of implicit bias, and understanding the implementing cultural competence. That is the longest title for a course I have ever heard in my life.
Yes.
In addition, André developed and coordinated the Child Protective Investigators Team coaching program. In late 2019, he left Rhode Island and RIDCYF and relocated right down here to Miami. In 2020, he founded Racial Just Us, an agency whose primary mission is to provide diversity, equity, and inclusion focused coaching, consulting, training, facilitation, and public speaking services. André developed the Coaching for Community Antiracism Series as a way to help participants create individualized anti-racism action plans to affect change in themselves, their workplaces, and their communities. Ladies and gentlemen, André Brown.
Thank you, Jimmy. That was a great introduction, and thanks for making me sound great. First, I want to thank everyone who's participating today. My wife and I had relocated to Florida in 2019, and I connected with the ICF South Florida. I've had a great relationship, and I've learned and met quite a few people, quite a few of you probably on the presentation here today. Love Misha. Misha and I came into coaching at the same time. And look where she is. She's blown up. And so I am just so thankful that I've had the opportunity to connect with this community. So today, I'm hoping that you will take away some good information about social impact coaching, but also just to hopefully maybe even inspire you to utilize your own skills to make an impact socially. We as coaches are always we're people, like first and foremost. And I think that as we continue on through our process and our career in coaching, we learn more and more. And we all know and recognize that there is a way for us to make some significant change, not only in the at the personal level with our clients, but also in a larger way. And so that's what I'm hoping to get across to you today. So again, thank you for being here, and I hope that you enjoy today's presentation. Okay, Jimmy, thank you. All right, so Jimmy, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And then to the next one. All right, so during today's presentation, I'm hoping that we are able to get across the following points, the following objectives. We will learn why traditional diversity, equity, and inclusion training is ineffective and what now works in today's world. We're also going to, we will learn about the Coaching for Community Antiracism Series. We will learn about the anti-racism philosophy, and also learn about social impact coaching and how we as coaches can make an impact through our skills. Okay, thank you, Jimmy. All right, so the first thing is before we get started, I think it's important for me to give some personal background as to where I came from, my story, because it really does inform where I am today and how I've evolved as a person. Thank you. All right, so in my case, I came from two teenage parents. They were born and raised in the Jim Crow South in North Carolina. I was born in the mid-'60s. And so my father, being in the military, ended up going into, well, he was sent to Vietnam. And you would think, okay, that's not a great thing. But ironically, what happened is it helped me and helped my family to leave those circumstances and have an opportunity to grow as a family in a place that was quote unquote less racist. So as I grew up, my father stayed in the military and my parents stayed together until I was about 14. My parents split up, and as a result, I stayed with my mother, and we lived in subsidized housing in this predominantly white neighborhood. And North Kingstown, Rhode Island is it's a very suburban, calm place. It's beautiful. It's near the water, et cetera, et cetera. But what I ended up doing was living and going to school in a situation where I lived in the projects. My mother she worked, but there really wasn't a lot of extra money to go around. So we lived in this neighborhood that was, it was a poor working neighborhood. There were a lot of issues, so as I said, North Kingstown was a predominantly white area, but essentially in the housing area or projects that I lived in, it was very mixed. It was very diverse, but there was a higher percentage of people of color living in that area. And so there was all types of problems there. I remember living next door, I literally lived next door to the biggest drug dealer in that housing complex or in that housing area, ironically. And so that kind of initiated me at 15 into this life of drugs and discrimination, substance use, and all of these different issues that happened in this small microcosm of an area. While I was growing up, for me, as much as I loved learning, school was just something that I had to do. And so I was not invested in my own education. I was bright, but I was not applying myself in my school. So I just basically stumbled through high school. And, when it came time to graduate, I had to scramble to get myself together to do enough and be able to move on to college. thankfully, the person that helped me there, my guidance counselor, turned me on to this program at Rhode Island College, thanks to the TRIO programs. And that's what really helped to fuel me to grow. As I was growing up, a big part of my childhood was based in, my friends were all, we all hung together. We all, kind of supported each other in our dysfunction and really not really achieving that much, but just kind of hanging out as regular teenage boys. I realize now that, out of that group, I was the only one that was able to make it out of the neighborhood and be able to actually graduate from college. Thank you, Jimmy. So, during that time, like I stumbled through my teens, my 20s. I just was not really focused on anything that I was doing. And like I said, I was just doing enough to get by at that point. So after, after kind of living this life of just kind of floundering around, I was able to get it together, and have since been able to move forward and to attend school and attend and earn multiple degrees and that type of thing. And my life has been so much different as a result of that. That's really what, for me, turned things around for me and allowed me to grow and progress. Unfortunately, my siblings, we all came from the same family, but their experience has been much different. They have struggled with poverty, incarceration, substance abuse, illness, all of these issues that to this day continue to affect them. And it's really kind of hard to see and hard to kind of look at as I progress and have grown to be become older. Thank you, Jimmy. So once I graduated from college, I went to, I was able to obtain work through the state of Rhode Island. And I had a 25-year career with the state of Rhode Island. I worked for the Rhode Island Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and the Rhode Island Department of Corrections. Now, Children, Youth, and Families is really, in a nutshell, is an agency that's tasked with making sure that children are well cared for, and that we monitor and make sure that families have the supports they need. It's a state agency, so in some cases, people either are neglecting their children or they're abusing their children. And so DCYF steps in to make sure that those children are safe. And while doing that, what we're hoping to do is to help to teach and help those parents that are either not able to care for their children properly. We're hoping that we can affect change in their lives so that they're able to keep their children in the home. And sometimes that wasn't the case. Sometimes kids would need to go into foster placement. Sometimes they would need to be adopted out to other people. And so depending on the situation, that would change. But what I ended up doing was, initially I was working as in the juvenile services, where we're basically working with youth, both male and females, who are either delinquent or who are involved in criminal activity and have been placed on probation by the state. And so my role for a number of years was to do that. After about 14 years, I became a trainer with the DCYF. And so there, my role was to make sure that social workers and child protective service workers were doing the best they could to provide the best services for children. So we would train them on how to make sure that they did their jobs effectively. And I loved that job. It really provided me an opportunity to make some meaningful impact in the community. And the interesting thing is that during that time, it really took me back to my own childhood, my own situation as a teenager, and seeing these the negative impacts that occurred for these people, very similar to my own situation. You know, racism, discrimination, poverty, all of those things really have a major impact on people, and we don't realize how much that can affect people in all facets of their lives. So my role was really like, and my mission was really to help out as much as I could. Thank you, Jimmy. So while I was at DCYF, in addition to doing training, I also would create programs that would help to empower different groups of people. For example, I created a program that was designed specifically for fathers who had children in DCYF care, custody, that type of thing, and we did some great work with that. My goal, as I said earlier, was really to empower these people, to help them, to help themselves, so that they were able to advocate for themselves and to be able to make changes in their lives and in the lives of their children, so that they could move on to become productive people in society. Another thing that I did was in addition, was become a youth mentor. And so I worked with a lot of young people that were, you know, who had similar backgrounds that I did as a teenager, and was hoping to provide as much support as I could that way. But one of the things that I found in doing this, in this approach, was that I really wasn't treating the you know, I wasn't treating the source of the problem. You know, I was treating the symptoms. And so you're helping people, and all of it's necessary. You're helping people who are really struggling in life, and if they're moving forward and have these different things that are keeping them from being able to be successful, there's always something. Every time you turn around, there's always something. So this is what I was doing, and I recognized this, you know, after a number of years, that, you know what, this is great, and I enjoy my work, and I feel like it's meaningful, but there was something in the back of my mind that was telling me that it wasn't enough. Oh, thank you, Jimmy. You know, as part of that experience, you know, at the time, especially when I got into the training department, you know, I was working at creating and facilitating DEI trainings as part of my role. And so we would conduct trainings that would bring in employees from the department, as well as private child welfare organizations, to help them have a better sense of working with people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and primarily people of color that we were tasked to work with. So after all this time, in 2019, I had, you know, at that point, I had been with the department for 25 years, and I was just tired. Like I just needed, both my wife and I were just tired, and we needed a change. And so, you know, it was a few years before this. It was probably 2015, 2016 when we decided, okay, we are going to move, we are going to start a new life. And I wanted to do something different. So in 2019, in November, I left DCYF and we relocated to Miami, Florida. Part of my move here was to work in a youth organization, like serve as a developer, a director of a youth organization that I had been talking with, you know, about setting something up in Miami. And And at first things seemed to be going great, but then when we got to Miami, the thing fell apart. So I'm here with no job, and in a new area, and so that was kind of anxiety provoking for a while, for sure. This was just, like I said, we moved here in November of 2019, so this was just 3 or 4 months prior to the pandemic. Thank you, Jimmy. So in May 2020, we all know what happened. This is when George Floyd was murdered. And in addition to having this pandemic, we were dealing with this circumstance, the situation that was very traumatic for people. It was very divisive. It was just a very challenging situation. We were all aware of what happened there. Personally, I dealt with a number of different emotions. I was angry, I was sad, I was frustrated. It was just a really difficult time to be, be a person, be an American, be whatever. It was just very difficult. One of the things that I did during that period was like I wanted to do something and I didn't know what to do. And so after, a few discussions with my wife, I said, okay, how can I make a difference? And so given my background, what I decided to do was create a program that incorporated coaching and training skills to help people fight racism by taking meaningful action in their lives. And what I thought this would do is, because, at that time, I was hearing people say, this is awful. I really want to do something. What should I do? And like me, I figured, okay, if I come up with something that helps people create change, maybe that's going to get the ball rolling in the right direction. And so at that point, I started the process of creating a program. Thank you, Jimmy. So in the summer of 2020, I founded Racial Justice. And Racial Justice is an agency that was created to provide DEI coaching, consulting, training, facilitation, and public speaking services. So I wanted to do all of that, depending on what the needs were out there. And as the first offering of Racial Justice, I created the Coaching for Community Antiracism Series. And this is what was going to be my vehicle to really affect change. At that time, it also signaled a shift away from me treating the symptoms to actually addressing the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is addressing racism and addressing racist policy. And it wasn't that I felt like I by myself was going to eliminate racism, but I did feel like if I was able to touch enough people, and if I was able to connect with enough people utilizing coaching and education, there could be a really, really big shift, like I felt, at least in the people that I connected with. Thank you. So to understand how coaching can have a positive impact on clients, we first need to review traditional DEI training approaches. And so DEI has been around for a while. This is, it's not something new. And I suspect that many of us that are here today have been in a situation where we've either had some type of DEI training or participated, led any number of different things. It's been around probably since the 60s. So it's not brand new. Thank you. So when we talk about a DEI approach, the traditional DEI approach, it has some things. And initially when it was developed, it was designed to help us and designed to help organizations make a change and I'll say deal with the problem of racism. But it wasn't that easy. And racism is insidious, and it is something that just is difficult to grasp and difficult to get a hold of. So thank you, Jimmy. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the traditional approach, these are some of the things that come to mind. Like I said, companies have utilized this type of approach for over 50 years at this point, close to 60 years. But the problem with it is that it actually increases bias in employees. It makes people even more divisive. You're trying to bring people together and eliminate racism, but what it does is it does the opposite. It actually increases bias in workers. And people, like anybody, if you're told to do something, chances are you're going to rebel against that approach if you don't agree with that approach. Thank you. One of the things about the traditional approach is that people will quickly shut down. They become defensive, and they don't feel empowered to be a part of the solution. They become more in the protective mode and really try to keep themselves in a place where they are holding on to whatever it is that they believe in. In a lot of cases, many people don't participate, and as a result, the trainings yield poor results. So I think back to the few times that I had trainings myself when I was working for DCYF, and there were situations where people just they were just not interested. For one thing, they were forced to be in these trainings. And the second thing is that they just did not have a trust or have an inclination to be open to what they were hearing in a lot of cases. And so what happens is, companies tend to lose time, money, and the opportunity to address the real issue is lost. Thank you. The other thing is that executives tend to resort to methods to make change. So their efforts become more punitive than necessary. They become more black and white, if you will. So you're either cooperating or you're not. Blaming and shaming is big. In a lot of cases, there is a lot of blaming and shaming that takes place that also makes people feel bad. And, if you're approaching things from that perspective, you're really losing the opportunity to kind of help people gain more understanding of themselves and how their actions are impacting other people in the world. The traditional approach is also, fear-based and similar to having it be a cut and dry approach or a black and white approach. It's really, it becomes polarizing overall. Thank you. So when you look at DEI and you look at the traditional approaches of DEI, you think, as I said, we've probably been utilizing these approaches for some 60+ years. And the reality is that there has to be a better way to address racism, address discrimination in the workplace. So what's a better alternative? Thank you. The modern DEI approach. And so with the modern approach, there is a completely different type of way of being, you know, which as far as the interaction of people and systems. And so we'll go into that. Thank you. So when we talk about the modern approach, it basically focuses on eliminating control tactics, sparking more interaction, more engagement, and increasing the contact between different groups. Thank you. So with the modern approach, you also have specific targeting or recruitment of women, minorities, people from LGBTQI+ communities, people with ability, differing abilities. You're also relying more on mentoring, diversity task forces, diversity managers, engagement. That said, if you're focusing on these different things, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to create an amazing workspace, an amazing environment, but it gives you a chance. It gives you a fighting chance. It helps you to be able to create a climate where change and real meaningful change is possible. So in addition, you have social accountability. And so voluntary training is a powerful concept. Participants are of the mindset that I'm choosing to be here, so I must be pro-diversity. So what you're doing is, instead of like in the traditional approach, you're not necessarily taking an approach where you're forcing your managers or forcing people in the workplace to do certain things. What you're hoping to do is to create an opportunity for them to recognize that, hey, I'm a nice person. I can help other people regardless of their backgrounds. I can be of assistance and make this a better place, a better workplace. Thank you. Coaching, the key to better DEI outcomes. So as I was, like I said, as I was becoming moving more into the coaching profession, I gave thought to how coaching could be used to help people to transition into a space where they were giving more thought to themselves and how they interact with other people and their beliefs, and how that could, how focus on coaching could really help them to see in a different way or to adopt a different mindset. So coaching recognizes businesses and employees as integral parts of the solution. We're all part of this thing. As we know, as coaches, we know that coaching has the power to really change people. And also, coaching allows individuals to absorb information that becomes more part of them. So they are able to internalize those changes, and that's what tends to be more permanent or really help long term, as opposed to just kind of a superficial approach. So as a coach, my role is to figure out how people feel and not tell them how they should feel. It's more about them exploring the ideas within themselves. And coaching works especially well with in those DEI spaces. And obviously it leads with empathy. It's more about understanding of yourself and understanding of others. Coaching promote self-discovery. We're all familiar with that. The idea that people can grow at their own pace. And that's really critical. What I've noticed is that the people that I work with in terms of DEI focus coaching, people are at different levels, different areas, and it's important for them to be able to kind of move and progress at their own pace. Thank you. Coaching doesn't have to bombard participants with judgment that they should already be somewhere. So they don't necessarily have to see that, oh well, I'm behind, I need to catch up. It's about where they are and continuing to grow in that way. And it also goes beyond the fact that they're broken in some way. They are like, people come in and they work and they grow based on where they are. So this brings us to my first question. And what I'd like to do is to open it up to the whole group and to hear from you. How would you describe your past experiences with DEI training? And I suspect that, like I said, some of us may or may not have had DEI trainings or attended workshops, that type of thing. I'd like to know what was helpful and also what was not helpful or potentially harmful. So I guess from here, let's kind of open it up for the next 10 minutes or so, and feel free to share with us what your experiences have been.
You can just come off mic or raise your hand with the little Bitmoji thing, whichever you like, and we definitely would love to hear from you.
Hi, this is Sue O'Connor. I would say what was helpful for me was hearing people's stories, right? Mm-hmm. And hearing how something that was either done to them or that they experienced was completely outside of how I would have interpreted it. And it really opened my eyes that there are many different perceptions, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't make any of them more real than another. So it was really hearing from individuals and their experiences. And I would say I agree with you on what was not helpful was making training mandatory. I can't tell you how many people I heard, oh, why do we have to go to this? And you're right, it inflamed some people. And I think made them more entrenched in not wanting to learn or grow or to see someone else's experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Susan. Those are great points that you make, and that's been my experience too. Is hearing that. Thank you.
I'll share. I think I've only experienced DEI training in a corporate environment, and there's never been any connection as it relates to the content. And so the perspective that I noticed everybody walking into the room with was very much like what Susan just described. Oh my, here we go again, another mandatory thing. And while I think it being mandatory is not necessarily the crux of the problem, I think the fact that a lot of corporate entities, at least in my experience, that wherever I was, while they didn't, I don't really know how they truly felt about DEI. But that says enough right there. I didn't really truly know how they felt, what they felt about DEI, but it was more a liability consideration from a legal perspective. We have to put this in here, and so let it be there, and everybody checks the little box, and we can all go back to our offices. and nobody really takes anything in. So what was not helpful, and what I think was actually harmful, because it empowers this perspective of, oh, this is just another mandatory thing that is required in a corporate environment, is the fact that it was brought to the people in the way that it was, and that there was no real human connection to it. And that, I just feel like it was just another little checkbox. So yeah, that's been my experience. And I don't know what is helpful, because I would agree that I would think coaching is a helpful way of, or bringing it from a coaching perspective, where you're not demanding X, Y, and Z, but where there's a more coaching perspective of openness and honesty and truth. And also, I think what might be helpful is bringing it in as something that the company or that an entity really believes in. So making it almost something that you focus on when you hire people. Really understanding, so that you really can share where you stand on it. Anyway, sorry for the long-winded response.
Absolutely. No, that was great. Thank you for that. And that's the thing, is that there's so many situations where it's just people, the way that it's brought about, we see it as an obligation. Oh boy, all right, here we go. We got to do this. We got to do that. And that, unfortunately, really kills it from the start, because we just are not able to come at it from a place of growth and understanding. It's more about, some other meaningless or painful or boring or what have you obligation that we have to go through. So thank you, Shakti. Someone else? Chris,
Go ahead, Chris. And then you, Arnie, after.
I think people in corporations, they don't really lead with emotions. We're reading a book now in the ICF book club called Aspire, and it's about leading with emotions in corporate workplaces. And that's a great book. I would give it to every one of my corporate clients, because it's very insightful on how to lead with emotions. And the first one is empathy, and it starts from there. So I think it's a good example for people to read that book and really follow those principles, in my opinion. It's called Aspire.
Thank you. Lead with emotions. Okay, so, thank you.
Andre, I can share a couple ideas that you've stimulated in your introduction and moving from your own story into DEI. And I'm Ernie. I'm a coach. I live here in South Florida. And one of the things we're doing is focus on the building blocks in organizations. So looking at organization systemic change and working primarily with teams. Teams are the cornerstone of organizations. So how can we be more effective in working with teams as well as individuals? It's not an either or, it's a both and. And helping our clients, the teams, and particularly the team leader, look at DEI in a whole other way. We don't even use it. I mean, we've adapted it and say ideal, inclusion, diversity, equity, action, and learning, but say the responsibility for DEI from the traditional sense is really into the modern approach is the responsibility of every team leader. And so that gets at not only looking at the color of skin, but also of gender and age and introverts, extroverts, ensuring that everybody's voice is heard. And I think that's the business we're in. We're in the voice business. So how can we help teams? How can we help organizations create that environment where it's okay to say no, or I've got a different idea. Andre, are you interested? And I think as coaches, we can make a big difference by understanding the dynamics of teams and what goes on under a team, where we can help the DEI aspirations, the all kinds of other aspirations of, breaking the glass ceiling. I was just on a call with somebody this morning who said, how can we break the glass ceiling? She's working with women in France. And I think there's so many paradigms that we can break as coaches in teams that can really have a big impact on organization. And we can, at the same time, work at organization change, working with the CEOs, the boards of directors, their teams. There's leadership at the beginning. And so we have what we call a shared leadership approach that incorporates DE. And there's a lot of tools and concepts that can make that happen. It's not impossible, and it's loads of fun.
I agree. Ernie, thank you so much for that, because you're right. It's like, and through the work that I've done, I've seen that, you need to have people approach it together at all levels of the organization, whether it's, at the lower levels of the organization, people tend to get involved in the ERG or the employee resource groups. But it's also imperative to have it at the mid-management and the executive levels, because at the executive levels, they set the tone for what the organization is. And so if they are not bought in, and if they are not moving the organization in the right direction here, then nothing really grows. Those people at the bottom don't really, they can meet all they want, but like meaningful change doesn't happen. So I am in agreement with you in terms of having teams working together, and also making sure that everyone is involved, or as many people as possible are involved. And there's some great ways to do that. So thank you for kind of pointing that out.
Hey, Andre, do you mind if I just make a quick comment and then we'll get on?
Sure, yeah.
So it's, I'm a trainer for decades and a coach for a couple of years. And it seems to me, and I've done the DEI training, it seems to me that we could do a lot better job in training this subject if it were not led by trainers and it were led by coaches, because trainers are instruction givers and coaches work with a group. The other thing I think we can do to really improve the quality of the topic, the subject, and the understanding of it is, at the end of the day, when you look at the training, it's still like all categorization. Like, have interactive sessions where we get to know each other, but not in the sense of, oh, tell me about your culture. What kind of foods do you like? Like, that's what creates the division. If we just talk to the human and we create a scenario where we're like, okay, you're going to break up into groups of 3 or 4 or 2, whatever it is, and you're not allowed to talk about your culture. You're not allowed, like, learn about the person. And then once we learn about the person, we don't try to categorize them, because now it's someone we know as that unique individual. It's not like, oh, that's that Black person I know. That's that Colombian person I know. That's that that's that neurodivergent person I know. No, that's the person that I know as the person. And then I can have a much better conversation with that person, because I'm not hung up about the culture. Yes, I care, but that's what creates the problems that we have, is when we start to put the adjectives on and make too strong an effort to try and learn about the culture instead of the person, because that person might come from a culture and they have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree 100%. And that's, oh, go ahead, Lillian.
Thank you. So to the story point, I think like what Jimmy just said would be totally like kind of summed up with, we all need to tell our individual stories. And I'm just going to add one little thing here, because I just had a real wake up call the last 6 months on this, where I met with 3 different individuals where I was talking to them and they were like, I just want to talk about your anger. And I was like, anger? Like, I don't think I have anger, but I was telling them my story and they were like talking about how I needed to embrace my anger. And I thought, dear goodness, I just got a taste of something that other people deal with to a much greater degree than I do. And everybody needs to understand how frustrating that is when you're just talking and you're being told like, tone it down or not emotion. We have so much fear around that in our corporations. And the only way we're going to ever connect is if we have all those emotions on the table, all those stories on the table, and we're really immersing each other in what we've each experienced, because we're not able to do it at just a fact basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great points, everyone. I mean, it's, and that's the thing. I mean, it really, you know, and just getting back to what Jimmy was saying about replacing trainers with coaches, I think that would really help in terms of in terms of creating some change. So I'd love to continue on. I know we have to keep going. Thanks again, everyone, for your contributions. So whenever you're ready, Jimmy. All right, so my answer to more impactful DEI outcomes, the Coaching for Community Antiracism Series. Thank you. All right, so Coaching for Community Antiracism Series, as I told you earlier, is a result of my actions following the George Floyd incident. So I created Racial Justice, and Coaching for Community was its first program series that I created as a result. Thank you. So what is the Coaching for Community series? Essentially what it is it's a 7-session series. It's a virtual anti-racism coaching and education program that I initiated to help people, groups, and businesses create personalized action plans for change. Thank you. And so these topics are what we address in my series. We talk about implicit bias, allyship, spheres of influence, the types of racism, identifying and prioritizing issues, identifying values and principles, talking about writing, implementing, and revising the action plan, and then also responding to challenges. And so, as you see, that information is really about helping people gain a basic understanding about racism and some of the primary issues that need to be addressed or may need to be addressed. And so what I'm looking to do, you know, especially with my education background, is to help people kind of develop a baseline for their anti-racism education. And through that, I utilize coaching. So why is this initiative different? The series meets participants where they are in their anti-racism journey, giving each person the freedom to expand at their own pace. So everyone comes in at a different spot or in a different place. And so I'm about helping them move forward from that spot and growing from that spot. Thank you. We've talked about coaching, and coaching is critical. Obviously, you know, utilizing ICF guidelines is really important, but this really helps to provides a safe place to uncover people's biases and also empowers them to create goals that are meaningful to them. Thank you. Why is this important? Because we're talking about celebrating the individual journey. We're looking at people's strengths, their challenges, and being able to help move them forward without shame or blame. So this series was inspired by the work of Ibram X. Kendi, Ijeoma Olu, and many others. But that was what really kind of drove me to this place. So anti-racism. And so when we talk about anti-racism, what is that? The first thing we need to do is talk about what racism is. And there's a lot of definitions out there, but this is the one that I settled on. It's the belief that race is a factor in human and individual achievement, and that one race in Western societies, the white race, is superior to other races, and thus has the right to marginalize or oppress people of other races. Thank you. So what exactly is anti-racism? And how do we become anti-racist? Anti-racism is the practice of actively identifying and opposing racism. And the goal is to actively change policies, behaviors, and beliefs that perpetuate racist ideas. and actions. So the act of being anti-racist is an active pursuit. And so with that, what it's really about is recognizing and working to eliminate those practices and policies that are built into our institutions. Just about every major organization or major system within our country is affected by racism, whether it's education, housing, medicine, you name it. Like every one of these systems has some form of racism already baked in. So identifying ways in which the white race benefits from these systems and institutions and working to change them. And what we need to do is raise awareness of how racism impacts people of color and limits our country's ability to be a great place for everyone. So there are certain tenets that speaks to anti-racism. And basically, they're recognizing how racism is more than a personal belief system, acknowledging how it shapes society in obvious and subtle ways, and it's about dismantling racist systems and institutions. All right, and it's rooted in action steps to eliminate racism at the individual, institutional, and structural levels. Being anti-racist requires that we all become lifelong adherents to this system. It's about adopting that for ourselves and having it be a way for us to be in the world. Really, it's about being comfortable and being able and willing to share, to practice these concepts. It requires that we examine our personal biases and that we are willing to really look at our own thinking. Thank you. All right, spheres of influence. And so when we talk about spheres of influence, basically it's about being able to understand what's affecting us as people and who we are able to influence as part of that circle. So, you know, all of us are plugged into our families, our friends, our communities, our country, you name it. So it's almost like concentric circles that move outward. And so in each concentric circle, we have a certain number of people that we're able to interact with and influence as members of that particular circle. And so being able to do that is important. So racial discrimination. I was saying that Ibram X. Kendi is a big inspiration for my program. And so he talks about racial discrimination is an immediate and visible manifestation of an underlying racial policy. When someone discriminates against a person in a racial group, they're carrying out policy or taking advantage of the lack of a protective policy. Xioma Olu. The beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including yourself. And it's the only way forward. So, you know, like you would think, okay, here it is, it's 2022. And, you know, 2 years ago, we had this amazing, impactful, life-altering racial awakening. But what continues to surface is that we're still having states pass or trying to pass legislation that leads to racist policies. So you look at the state of Florida and the number of ways that Florida has brought about or incorporated past legislation or has utilize legislation that is basically racist in nature. And we won't go into all the details, but I'm sure that as most of us as Floridians, and even some that are not Floridians, we can see how our state and other states around us are making these changes that are really damaging to racial equity and are damaging to us being able to be like a fair and just society. We talk about, a few years ago, and having our, having DEI trainings be outlawed by the federal government. Thankfully that policy was revoked in January 21, but it's a constant ongoing struggle. We're constantly having to address and counter these types of issues that are happening to us. So Ibram X. Kendi again, what's the problem with being not racist? It is a claim that signifies neutrality. I am not racist, but neither am I aggressively against racism. But there is no neutrality in the racism struggle. The opposite of racist isn't not racist, it's anti-racist. So it means fighting against racist policy as opposed to just not being racist, quote unquote, not being racist, which is just really doing nothing and just kind of letting things go status quo. We should be looking to end these policies and looking to break down these different things. All right, our next discussion. What steps can you take or have you taken to become anti-racist in your own life, family, work, etc.? So we'll take a few questions. I know we're running a little bit behind, but I would like to take 2 or 3 questions, not questions, but 2 or 3 statements on what people are doing to become anti-racist in their lives. Chris has got his hands raised.
Thank you, Andre. I grew up in the West Indies. So just being around the culture of different races and colors helped me. And then I did hospitality work. So I worked on private yachts traveling the world and got to firsthand know a lot of different cultures other than mine. So that helped me realize that even though people were different than me, I could be around them. It wasn't so strange anymore. It was just me traveling, living with other cultures, and getting used to living with people that were different from me. Opened up my horizons. I think when people keep their horizons closed, don't travel, don't open up, they just are used to what they're used to.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Anyone else?
I don't know
Anyone
if
else?
it's Jimmy. I don't know if I've done anything to become, I like to think I'm anti-racist. I stick up for everybody, no matter who they are. I know that it's the idea of what you're saying there, or what Kendi is saying about the, not racist. It goes back to, it's just like the idea of Elie Wiesel and his idea of indifference. And so if we just are indifferent, then we're not helping the cause. We're just turning our eyes and not looking at it, and we're not doing anything to help the situation. And inherently that does make it worse, because the more people that are indifferent, the less it seems to be a situation. And so we're not doing much in that regard. But again, I still go back to, if we want to create really like strong, effective movement forward, we have to start treating each other like individuals and not like groups and categories. Yes, I'm a coach, and I'm a dad, and I'm a boyfriend, and I'm a this, and I'm a whole bunch of things. We all are. We're all
Mhm.
individual people. It doesn't matter what, external or internal peculiarities, we have. We're individuals and we're completely different, even though we're very much the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
Well said. Go ahead, Ernie.
Yes, I think there's one thing we can all do, and as coaches, we can do some pro bono work. We can offer our
Mhm.
services in areas where we see that there's bullying, whether it's racism, whatever it is. I was a Peace Corps volunteer for 3 years in Borneo and was working with all kinds of indigenous people, and Dayaks and the Punans were one of them. And I saw that their land was being taken away illegally by the government, by the chief minister. And it got me very angry. And so I said, what can I do? Your question, what can I do? And I said, well, I can't assassinate this guy, but I can help to work with an indigenous group. So I volunteered my time and ran a leadership development program for a group of Dayaks and Punans who were trying to get their land back and their rivers back. And they did the work. I just provided the support system to coach them as a group. And they were able to do that. And so I think there are a lot of ways where in our blocks, in our schools, wherever it is, we can volunteer. And there's a lot of tools we can use. And I'd be happy to share a wonderful tool to some of you who are interested called peer learning that can really tackle some of the indigenous discriminatory things that are going on in our world.
Right. Thank you, Arnie. And in a few minutes, I'll kind of touch on what we can do in terms of as coaches, as individuals to make a difference. But thank you for that. All right. So next slide, please, Jimmy.
Oh, I just want to acknowledge Leslie. She had a comment or a question.
Oh, sure. Sorry, Leslie.
Hi, no problem. I just wanted to chime in on that. And it took me a minute to think about what I've done as a Black woman that grew up in the Caribbean. When I came to the States, I would say, because I had not really experienced much as it relates to racism, to just come as I am with my color and, my category, I guess you could say. And I guess have in this society, maybe have the audacity to go for certain positions or to show up in certain places or in a certain way or with a confidence, I think is probably what my contribution that I've made to anti-racism, to show up and to be me and to not shrink back. So, and then I would just say that kind of attitude or presence was also countered by Black women here. Like they also look upon another Black woman from somewhere else and say, well, how dare you, or something like that. So that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
I love that. I love that, like as you said, like having the audacity to be yourself is just, and that's the thing. I mean, and this is like, the thing that I found frustrating is that it's just really challenging, really difficult work because, like it can be difficult having people understand what you're, the importance of it, what you're trying to do, the reason why we need to grow and to be open and be accepting and loving of other people, other races, backgrounds, etc. And it's some really challenging work. But from an individual person, an individual perspective, like you were saying, Leslie, you can, the first thing you can do is live these concepts for yourself. Like, and if you're living it through yourself, then you can also start to share, and people will learn from experience and also learn through working with us as coaches, etc. It's you know, it's not easy. It's not easy. And so thank you for sharing that. Okay. So how can we help as a coach? There's social impact coaching. And so I've, you know, for the last hour and a half, close to hour and a half, I've been talking about how I have gone about bringing about change or affecting change. But it's important for us to recognize that as coaches, we have an infinite ability to make change, to create change in our society. And so social impact coaching is really about the intersection of a good coach with the coach's desire to create social impact. So if you have this desire and you want to affect change, you can do it, and it can be in any area. That doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, regarding race and racism. It could be, you know, any area you can imagine, whether it's the climate, homelessness, any number of different things that strike your interest. A lot of us are coaches, and we may do have a certain niche that we're focused on, whether it's business or transition or leadership or executive coaches, and that's okay. It's okay to have that. But if there's this feeling inside you to want to make a difference, you have the opportunity to make a difference there. Next slide, please, Jimmy. All right, so one of the great things, and it's interesting because when I started this presentation, you know, like several months ago, you know, I started, you know, creating this thing, and I was like, oh, let me look to see what the ICF says about social impact coaching. So I did that, and I was really impressed with how the ICF and the ICF Foundation, was making a difference in the work that they do. So the ICF Foundation is a non-membership body established as a 501c3 tax-exempt education and research-oriented legal entity of the ICF. Their mission is to accelerate and amplify social systems change through coaching. So there are a number of different ways that the ICF Foundation is willing to help you if you're interested. They have a lot of resources, a lot of ways to become involved. And so if you are interested and you don't necessarily know what you want to do, I would suggest taking a look at this. Next slide, please, Jimmy. So, you know, in terms of the ICF, Coaching for Social Impact, they have a link that's here at the bottom that will give you some good information and tell you more about how the ICF Foundation is making a difference and how they are connecting coaches to these different areas. And that is a great way to do this. Some of you might already be doing work. I know that, you know, like going back to when the pandemic first started, you know, I was doing some pro bono coaching, you know, as a result of the pandemic, and I can't remember the name of the initiative that was started, but, you know, I think the ICF basically partnered with an organization, and we were doing pro bono coaching in that regard to help people who were struggling with, you know, the nature of the pandemic. And so there are endless opportunities for us as coaches to be out there and make a difference in the world, you know, just based on these different things. So that basically concludes my presentation. I welcome anyone that wants to either continue this discussion or hear more about social impact coaching, in general. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Like I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. If you want to see more of my work, you can go to racialjustice.com. And I welcome, like any type of interaction or any type of connection that you are interested in having. And so with that, I thank you. I thank you for being here. I thank the ICF South Florida and Misha and Jimmy for having me. And I know there's a few minutes for questions. I'd be glad to ask or answer any questions that you have at this point. Okay, Jimmy, I think there's one more slide. I think it's the question slide. Yeah, right after that, I think.
It looks like my Zoom keeps on going to mute, which maybe it's trying to tell me something. So, I was trying to say over and over again, and maybe you heard clips and pieces of it. Thank you, Andre, for presenting today and bringing this very much needed topic to us. I'm going to keep sharing so that way we can all see each other more easily. That's a little bit better. There's a lot of love. I saw little hearts out there, and there's definitely some thanks and appreciation in the chat. So there's a lot going on there. Before we do go, does anyone have any questions or last comments or anything to ask of Andre? Come on, don't be shy. I saw Val put some comments out there. Chris did too. All right, well, I'm not going to make you speak if you don't want to. It's totally fine. Oh, wait, Chris does have something.
Just wanted to thank Andre. Very insightful. And it was a great time here this afternoon. Have a good day.
Well, thank you.
Andre.
And thank you for being part of the discussion, Chris. I appreciate it.
Good to have you in South Florida. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
And Andre, also thank you, of course. I also wanted to say thank you for being so open and for sharing with us your background, where you're coming from, and what your experiences have been.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, Shakti. What I would like to do is, and I saw that Chris Lewis is here. Oh, yeah. And I just, like, Chris was with me from the beginning. When I started to think about developing the coaching for community, he was serving as my coach. And so he heard me going through countless hours of trying to figure out what to do and going back and forth. And so I just want to give a big thank you to Chris for helping me work through that situation as well.
Thank you, Chris Lewis. There he is.
There he is.
You got it. You got it. It was a pleasure, Andre. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm here for you.
All right. Misha, do you have anything in closing?
I have a lot to say after closing, to be continued, Andre.
Okay.
But in closing, thank you so much, Andre, for your presence. And like you, I encourage you to tap on those 3 little dots on the Zoom and save this chat. There's so much good things in this chat that the audience have just been engaging in. And I think it might serve you just to be able to review that again and keep it. So if you click on that 3 little dots and save, you'll be able to hold on to that. This was a very engaging topic. It's telling of what's to come for ICF South Florida. And Jimmy and I are always paying close attention. Jimmy is very detailed on tracking activity with our programs. And he makes me so proud with that, because it tells a story. It's not just that I like numbers. I like the story that it's telling. And so this is telling something to us as well. So thank you, Andre, for just keeping us engaged. You held us for the entire time. And I appreciate your presence. And thank you, ICF South Florida members. You guys are the greatest. Thank you for your presence, your engagement, and I'm glad that you continue to find value in our programs. And we are gearing up for 2023, so continue to stay tuned, okay? That's all I got for you, Jimmy.
Absolutely, Misha. I see
Jimmy,
Kiara says it's too wide and important to have only one class. So I think we're going to keep exploring this area, and we'll keep getting into it because it is important, and there's a lot to take in there. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Andre, thank you so much for putting together an amazing presentation and helping us gain some insights and learn a little bit more and figure out how to be anti-racist, not racist.
Jimmy,
Can I just get?
Yeah, go ahead, Andre.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say that, as you all know, I've been here for 3 years, and I am just so thankful for the ICF South Florida. When I was in Rhode Island, there was a chapter in my area, but I never went to the meetings. But I am just very grateful because the group, you as a group, you, Misha, seeing you coming from day one and us being in that North University of Miami campus and getting to know each other and that whole thing. It's just been, I am just so grateful that I am part of this community, and you guys are doing a great job with it. So I just wanted to put that out there, and thank you again for having me.